Hey everyone, and welcome back to the news. Today, a fun little story because it's one where, honestly, I do have to try to check my own biases as I go into this, for I'm a massive nerd of the space games. I love them. In fact, Chris Roberts' previous game, Freelancer, okay, he wasn't actually around when the game shipped, but Freelancer is one of my favorite games, you know? The sort of 8 out of 10 that's just deep in your heart from when you were a kid. When it comes to Star Citizen, then, early on, yeah, I did end up getting a pledge. And, you know, every few months, I like to re-download it and see what's going on. Fly around my spaceship, see some of the cool, things that they've done. I'm sure many of you have seen that, the planet Crusader that kind of looks like Coruscant. Pretty cool. Now, with that being said, there are a lot of criticisms to levy at them. And that's the bit where I do have to be real. Because Squadron 42, which is the standalone single-player release, right? The one that's got Gillian Anderson and Mark Hamill and Liam Cunningham, John Rhys-Davies, all these actors that Chris Roberts knows from his, I suppose maybe his, or has the contacts to get them from his time, doing all the other things that he's done. I would like to play that. And unfortunately, I don't know when I'm going to get to play that. At one point, we were thinking it was going to be Q3 2020. That's obviously not happened. Now, interestingly, and I'll get into the full story quite shortly, I did take a look through the site, and I think it's roughly every week. They do a blog post on where their roadmap is. They recently talked about some of the Persistent Universe team swapping over to work on Squadron 42 related stuff, so maybe that bodes well for the single-player release. But overall, the situation for me with Star Citizen is that if you're the sort of player who knows what you're getting into, you can actually have a lot of fun. In fact, one of our editors, Nikki, over on the WoW channel, I think there's just about no way that you could say he has not got value for money from Star Citizen from what he's put into it. Now, that said, what he's put into it is what I'd call a vaguely reasonable sum of money, not something completely excessive, and for him, just logging in, doing some missions, having some banter, going around the different, worlds and things, that is a really good experience. But if you put a lot into this and you're expecting for things to be shipped on time, well, that's obviously not happening. So that does leave Star Citizen in this funny little mixed situation. And overall, the sort of space sim community is in a bit of a mixed situation. The most recent release of Elite Dangerous really has not went down well with the Elite community, to the point where I've seen a lot of Elite players actually going over to Star Citizen. And it's a very interesting situation. That's just a little bit of context. Now, the other side of that is you do have the likes of Derek Smart, who have been consistently trying to drum up drama around this. I think the most they'll say with the Derek Smart situation is just, go look at the things that he's done. I don't think those particularly are a great look in terms of, the actual games and stuff. So I do find it kind of hard to, respect that side of it. But as for what's happened now, it's an interesting one because for anybody who is in and around Star Citizen, this is legit just how it's been for years. And pretty much everyone's known. And it's just been normal. However, it seems to have perhaps escaped the Star Citizen community and is now reaching, broader press, because this has been covered by basically most of the big outlets who are perhaps not as used to the specific nomenclature that the Star Citizen people will be used to. So to get into this, right? Star Citizen concept ships draw criticism from UK Advertising Standards Authority. Now, this was picked up, I believe, quite big by Eurogamer and a few other sites. Now, the thing is that the ASA actually doesn't really go that hard against Cloud Imperium Games at all. It's just a quick little advisory note. So basically, a Redditor made an official complaint about this email, and they said that they were fed up of CIG and the constant lies, where basically this is a marketing email. Don't miss your chance to pledge for the GACTAC manufacturer alien or whatever. Basically, this is the specific verbiage that matters. This alien concept ship will be leaving the pledge store on Monday, July 19th. Concept ship. Now, concept ships are not ships you can fly right now because they've not been made. They're in the concept stage of development. So it's basically a pledge, it's a donation pledge. I mean, officially, this is what it is. It's a donation pledge to the Star Citizen project that will get you this concept chip whenever the concept chip is actually made. Now, of course, from this particular Redditor, they certainly have an opinion that maybe these concept ships won't be made. I think what you then have to think about is there a good faith belief that their intent is to actually make and ship that ship? I would overall say that given that you can log into Star Citizen and you can play the patches and see the updates and actually see all of these things eventually actually make it into the game, it seems that Cloud Imperium Games do have a good faith intent to actually ship all of this content. Now, that said, the thing is, it is the pledge store. This is basically just like a massive ongoing Kickstarter. Of course, it's also had an ongoing scope creep and timeline slippage that's led to this strange situation where you see slices of Star Citizen, some of their new, planetary cloud tech, kind of giving you a bit of a Bespin vibe. I think that's the one in Star Wars, or, maybe a Jupiter vibe to go to something that's in, the real world. You see all of those things that do just look incredible. And there are so many just incredible experiences you can actually have within Star Citizen right now. But when the timelines slip, and people just sort of wonder, well, I saw that big trailer for Squadron 42. Where is it? What's going on? That's when you get into this funky situation. And what's weird is that they are pretty good at giving constant updates on development for this game. It's just they've had this thing where a business model like this is playing with fire. It really is, right? Whenever you let that community down by basically bad planning, because it's not just the case of, bad planning, sorry, the game's going to be delayed. And, maybe at worst, it's somebody who pre-ordered the game gets a bit pissed off and maybe they can return their pre-order. This is different because it's a pledge store, right? It's crowdfunding, so you're playing with fire. They certainly are, and they have got a lot of money, and the project in many ways is incredible, but even as somebody who admittedly does want this to be a success, I can't take leave of my senses, and I do still have to remain, skeptical and critical of the things that go on. I'll certainly say that I can understand selling concept ship pledges way in the past, when not as much of Star Citizen existed. But what I would say is that right now, I understand that these pledge ships are, they are a way to get money from the most engaged members of the community. Other people would just say, well, I understand that it's an important part of their business model, probably. But do we really need to resort to concept pledges like this when there is a full game out? Not a full game, there is a game world to go out and explore, and maybe it would be a far safer by the community for them to just stop selling concept ships, because the game's no longer really in that earlier stage where those are something I think could have been a little bit more defendable. And that's basically the situation. A business practice that succeeded early on, I think now is being carried forward to the point where I don't really think it's what they should be doing. Now, everybody in the Star Citizen sort of community, the people who know about the game and would be buying one of these, they would see concept ship and know exactly what that means. So this is where I have criticisms of the Star Citizen business model, but I also think the reporting of this story has, I think in a few cases, evidently been with people who are just taking a cursory glance at this because they haven't been following Star Citizen perhaps as much. We'll get into it, though. So, yeah, basically the email, it's weird. The email refers to it as a concept chip. Now, I'm somebody who knows about Star Citizen, so I know precisely what that means. And everybody who's in and around Star Citizen will know what that means. However, concept ship is another way of saying this does not exist in game right now. And perhaps a disclaimer there would be the safe thing to do. I would certainly say so. And then the other thing is the and possibly never will. And that angle is why I talked about the whole, do they have a good faith intent to actually ship this product in terms of the ship? And there I would say, yes, I do. I think that if this was a massive Ponzi scheme or just a big scam or something like that, there would have been ways to have cut and run with the money a lot easier. I think a lot of that has, or some of that anyway, has been drummed up by Derek Smart, who I think has got a little bit of an axe to grind when it comes to all of this stuff. And I think the whole, this is just a Ponzi scheme, or, this is some sort of big grift, I actually think that was a far more believable argument a number of years ago. But I think what has happened, though, as the alphas have, progressed with their updates, I mean, you can log in. There is a degree of persistence. You can do missions, do things, go down to planets, do things in the bases and the planets, do all of that stuff, earn some money, use that money to buy a different ship. Like, there are many aspects of the game loop that are actually taking form and are in there, and people do actually just play Star Citizen like any other game. So I think that because we've got to that stage, we now have a little bit more evidence that development time and those honestly just eye-watering, mind-boggling quantities of money, that they are actually going somewhere. I think, is it Board Gamer? I think Board Gamer is one of the YouTubers who, I don't always get the time to jump into Star Citizen, but I do follow their coverage of the game. So basically, Matsy, the Redditor in question, complained that the ad was misleading because it didn't make it sufficiently clear that the ship was just a concept and could perhaps never appear in-game. Now, that could never appear in-game thing, it's not like they are just selling concepts, taking people's money, and then being like, maybe we'll make it. Right? I don't think it's that. I mean, certainly if it was that, then absolutely fuck them completely. If I did see compelling evidence or, if somebody leaked internal chat logs that suggested that there was anything other than a robust plan to actually ship these things, I mean, then, my blood pressure is going to be high and I'm going to be pretty pissed because that's deeply disrespectful and anti-consumer. But in this case, the complaint essentially is that it's not clear that it's a concept ship. The specific verbiage or the specific word concept ship is actually there in the marketing email in question. I think, though, something a little bit more elaborate or a disclaimer probably would have been a bit more useful. And as for the whole never appear in game, that's just the sort of thing. If the project runs into the ground and fails, then yeah, of course. In the same way that if you pledge for a Kickstarter tier and then that Kickstarter doesn't actually come out or go sideways, well, we'd all hope that they actually did plan to deliver the Kickstarter at the point when the pledge was made and the campaign was going on. I think the issue with Star Citizen then is you can only take so much scope creep and the timeline expansion that comes with that before you just start to get pissed off at the whole situation. So onwards to the ASA's response then, and it is a weak response. And right now, I think that is actually kind of a reasonable response when you get into it. So the ASA followed up on the complaint and assessed, they considered the fact the ship was a concept product that could have been made clearer, right? They have issued an advice notice. Just an advice notice. That doesn't mean that it's a super hardcore binding thing. Just an advice notice to ensure that their ads include any material information and significant limitations. Advice notices are issued when the ASA believes there are potential problems with advertising rules, but does not consider these to be severe enough to warrant a full formal investigation. So basically, this comes down to CIG is using the word concept to mean what basically the Star Citizen players generally know it to mean. But can you be 100% sure that everybody who sees that marketing email will know exactly what that means and will not inadvertently be missold a product, or maybe will purchase that knowing it's a concept but not really fully knowing what that means? I think it's unlikely, but I think it certainly is possible that could happen, and CIG have actually responded to this basically with a disclaimer. You know, some key things. Limited vehicle concept pledge. It will be available as playable content in a later patch. It mentions you receiving a loaner vehicle to use in Star Citizen until such time that one of these, concept ships are actually available, and that loaner vehicle that will be currently playable will be of sort of a similar, size and function to the concept pledge. And then they say, we offer pledge ships to help fund Star Citizen's development. The funding received from vehicles such as this allows us to include deeper features in the Star Citizen world. And I think that is actually a pretty big sentence. And the reason why is that I think there's a fundamental split. I think a lot of people really just wanted to see the game as pitched and as sold in that initial Kickstarter video. They just want to see that shipped and to have a really good space game experience. Then there are the people who are seeing where this persistent universe can go, right? Who are seeing that, rather than loads of procedurally generated star systems like in Elite Dangerous, that it feels almost a bit more like Freelancer, where it is handcrafted star systems and not handcrafted planets, entirely. Their procedural generation tech is honestly, it's absurd. You should really look into some of it. And then all the other things, like the mining in space, the mining in land. I mean, even when I was playing it, I think last year, I did this mission where, I flew to this big, space yacht, and I got out of my cockpit, used, my little, on my space chute thrusters to go over, and then board the ship, and then, take out a bunch of NPCs and do a mission on the ship. And I was just sitting there thinking, holy shit, there are aspects of jank here, but my god, I have never really had a game experience quite like this. And there's a few people I know who have, seen that in a non-scripted fashion as well. So there is this fundamental split. The people who are saying, actually no, cut down your scope and ship, please. And then the people who are saying, well, we're actually having fun in the alpha, we're liking to see all of these cool features come out that make it all feel, very authentic and well realized, and they're okay with this funding model. That's the tricky thing. I think Chris Roberts is a bit of a devil for scope creep. Let's be real. He is not a man to be trusted on timelines. I almost get, it's just that thing, when you hear Elon Musk says this thing will happen in this date, and it's actually 2 years later that it really happens. But it's a cool goal to have. And I think that's just a lot of what it's like with Roberts. I think his excitement and ambition probably does just get a little bit beyond, what is the most feasible. So that's the tricky thing. I think there hasn't been a project like this. I wonder if there will be one like this again. It certainly is a weird situation. Overall, I'll say this. I don't like the concept model, business model at all. Now, that whole thing of getting a loaner ship certainly is better, but I would just ask, do you need to sell a concept given what is now currently in the alpha? Now, as for this whole situation, well, the Redditor is not particularly impressed, saying that the wording is still extremely misleading, as CIG claim the ships will be playable when there's a very real chance they may never be. I would say, yes, that is true, but also at multiple points it is said that this is a pledge. It's on a pledge store. It's not literally buying a product, even though for some people it is, and that is a tricky gray area. But ultimately, it's like if you buy a thing on a Kickstarter or a crowdfunding thing, yeah. I mean, does every single thing have to have an asterisk of, there's a chance this entire thing could go up in shit and this won't happen? I would think that for most responsible consumers, that's decently obvious, though I suppose a disclaimer would not hurt, absolutely. That's basically what's going on. They hit 350 million back in March. They made 13.5 million in May. This has just been a part of their business model for ages, and for the specific thing that sparked this story and the numerous different articles, I mean, the ASA basically were like, here's an advisory notice. You could do better. There's a potential, but it's not that serious. And they've done that. So overall, I would say, keep the communications clear. If possible, let's move away from selling concept pledges, and let's just stick with pledges that are just, a lot more literally a thing. You pledge at that tier, then you get the thing in game. No confusion. I think that's just a far cleaner business model. And I think for something like Star Citizen, they're very aware that they've got this core community who really cares about the game, really supports them. And I think that what that community will be okay with and will find to be reasonable, perhaps will not seem reasonable to a broader gaming audience. And I think that if they want to get a little bit more respect back with that broader gaming audience, what they need to do is they need to think about all of this stuff in their funding model and perhaps just sort of think, okay, what's reasonable here? Do we really need to do all of these things? And I know that is literally asking a company to stop doing things that earn it big money. And, I could totally understand, say, a free-to-play mobile game developer not doing any of those, good things that would make it all better and a bit more clean and more ethically okay. But this is a game where the community is its heart. And I just feel like they make quite a few sloppy mistakes. And I think a lot of that's because it's this shifting and changing project. So, look, as somebody who has a good number of years ago put $100 into a MISC freelancer, I'll certainly say that I have got my $100 worth of video game playing, because for years I have been logging into Star Citizen, checking it out, doing some cool things, seeing some cool technology, even sometimes playing some fun video game. But it's not going to be like that for everyone, and they should probably try to just keep it a little bit more cool, a little bit more reasonable. But hey, when you can do this and, bam, 13.5 mil comes in 1 month, well, if people are happy enough to put their money in, and if they are well informed of everything and all the realities, then I guess that just is what it is. What do you think? I'd really like to know what you think about this one, because I did say at the top of this video, I do like space games. I really liked Freelancer. Played a bit of Star Lancer, of course, Elite Dangerous. I played a fair amount of that as well. So this is a genre that I like. Like, in many ways, Star Citizen is basically my dream game. So, as a gamer, I do want it to succeed. But then, as a consumer advocate, I also do have issues. It does make me feel a bit iffy. It makes me feel weird whenever just some of those aspects of this all come up. So do let me know, especially if you're a Star Citizen player, especially if you're an Elite Dangerous player who's moved over to Star Citizen, and if you're neither of those things, well, damn, do let me know, because I'm obviously in a position of being a little bit too close in terms of my personal preferences to the story, so I want to hear your take as well. That's it for me. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.